She kept it to herself for over 50 years. Most people thought the narrative ended there because the cameras had long since ceased recording. However, Julie Newmar, who will always be known as the original Catwoman, spoke out at the age of 89. Even devoted fans were stunned by what she revealed when she finally talked about Adam West, the man beneath the cape and cowl. Why now? And for all these years, what had she been concealing? As it happens, the truth is much more profound than anyone had anticipated. Batman was one of the most brilliant television programs of the 1960s. It was colorful, campy, and utterly unforgettable. It brought a comic book world to life and became appointment television for millions of people throughout its 1966 to 1968 run. Despite all of its glitz and glamour, what really made it memorable was the relationship between its performers. For a generation, Adam West's deadpan style and straight-faced charm made him the quintessential Batman. As Catwoman, Julie Newmar slithered onto the screen across from him, enthralling viewers with her humor, style, and unmistakable presence. Electric, flirtatious, dangerous, and constantly on the verge of becoming more, their on-screen tension was captivating. Fans watched every episode for the intense interactions between the hero and the villain as well as the crime fighting. Julie's Catwoman wasn't your typical foe. She was seductive, complex, and strangely empathetic. Adam's Batman, too. Torn between justice and something much more human, he was never quite sure how to handle her. Their relationship captivated both co-stars and crew members behind the scenes. Was there something genuine going on behind the surface, or were they merely acting? Over time, the series became a cult favorite, but that doubt remained. Was there ever anything between Julie and Adam? This was a question that comic book historians, pop culture authors, and convention enthusiasts would frequently ask. However, Julie maintained a certain distance from Adam West, who remained visible, candid, humorous, and introspective. She accepted her celebrity. Indeed, she participated in panels, discussed Catwoman, and even made fun of her iconic status. However, her responses were kind and succinct whenever the subject came up. Adam West. The truth about their relationship, what they had in common or didn't, appeared to be sealed away in the history of television. Filming Batman was anything but routine up to this point. Due to its extravagant nature, the play required a lot of energy, strict timetables, and a dramatic flair. However, actors who were aware of the humor also used it as a playground. Additionally, Adam West and Julie Newmar performed their roles flawlessly. Adam was well known on set for his cool head and dry humor. Even in between takes, he hardly ever deviated from his character and added a nuanced intellect to a part that could have easily turned into a farce. Julie, on the other hand, offered a surprising spark. She was fearless, creative, and exuded an air of constantly knowing more than she revealed. Their scenes were sizzling together. The way Adam would stare for too long was immediately noted by directors and crew. Julie's habit of curling a single word to make it sound inviting. The sentences came from the scripts, but what about the chemistry? They owned that. However, things were more tricky off camera. Personal time was scarce due to the hectic schedule of the event. The cast frequently characterized the environment as both professional and lighthearted. Although they had a good relationship, Julie and Adam never seemed particularly close outside of work. No prolonged farewells at the end of the day, no passionate murmurs. Merely two celebrities who performed their roles before parting ways. That's what everyone believed, anyway. Later, Julie referred to those times as a sort of dream. She recalled the hilarity in between takes, the colorful sets, and the outfits. However, she frequently smiled cryptically or shifted the topic when questioned directly about Adam. She once claimed that he knew how to keep a secret and was extremely excellent at what he did. Even back then, there were some noteworthy moments. Adam is said to have delivered Julie a single rose in between sequences during a particularly lengthy filming. Not ostentatious, just considerate. The crew quietly laughed as she stopped filming to help him straighten out a piece of his utility belt that had fallen off. These insignificant exchanges suggested a deeper level of understanding, perhaps even admiration. However, the two never discussed it in public, nor in memoirs, nor in interviews. Naturally, fans noticed even decades after Gotham's colorful streets had long since faded from the world's consciousness. They always do. On forums, conspiracy ideas surfaced. We rewatched, slowed down, and examined old clips. There were many who believed that Julie and Adam had disclosed a private matter that needed to be kept secret at the time. Others attributed it to nostalgia and outstanding performances. However, everyone agreed on one point. It never really went away, whatever was or wasn't between them. The curiosity of what actually transpired between Batman and Catwoman and why Julie had remained mute for so long persisted even as repeats were shown for younger audiences. The ensemble dispersed like smoke from a rooftop chase as Batman came to an end in 1968. Adam West was typecast and confined to the cowl and cape for all time. After struggling to land major jobs, he finally accepted the heritage and rose to fame as a voice actor and fan favorite. He transformed a once-limiting stigma into a crown by leaning into the memories. Julie Newmar did not follow the same route. By pursuing theater, literature, and eventually invention, she disassociated herself from the role that brought her fame. She became into somewhat of a mystery, remaining attractive and admired but becoming more and more reclusive. Additionally, she always resurfaced on her own terms. Adam and Julie have occasionally been spotted together at the same events throughout the years, particularly as fresh interest in the Batman fanbase grew, but something was consistently lacking. There was a calm reserve between them, a formality, a boundary neither of them appeared eager to breach, in contrast to other celebrity reunions when former co-stars embraced and reminisced openly. When Julie spoke about her time as Catwoman, she frequently talked about the choreography, costumes, and how much fun she had playing the part. However, Adam West was rarely brought up, and when she did, her responses were always succinct. Yes, respectful, yet aloof. She commended his professionalism. She often referred to him as a gentleman. However, their compliments seemed deliberate, almost practiced. Fans took note. Interviewers did the same. Adam, however, was more forthcoming. He never uttered a negative word for his co-stars and frequently talked about how much fun it was to work on Batman. He described Julie as exquisite and completely distinct in a few late interviews, but he never alluded to anything more profound. The subject seemed to be surrounded by an imperceptible border. Decades passed during which this quiet persisted. Stayed largely silent through Q&A sessions at comic conventions, television retrospectives, and even when Adam passed away in 2017. Naturally, she sent a thoughtful homage, a brief, beautiful note conveying her appreciation and thanks. However, it omitted more than it revealed. She held back, but why? Some thought she was just private. Some conjectured that their relationship, in whatever form it had been, was too intricate or intimate to distill to mere platitudes. However, the lack of clarification only stoked interest. Julie shared virtually nothing until things started to shift in a world where superstars frequently revealed too much. Subtle indications that something was changing were present, though not all at once. As she got closer to her late 80s, she started to talk more candidly in interviews. Slowly, piece by piece, the wall she had constructed started to fall down as her tone softened and her stories got more introspective. For the first time in more than half a century, Julie Newmar appeared prepared to speak the truth, and something had changed. Like hints in an old detective tale, there were indications long before any official acknowledgement, little incidents spaced out over decades. Most folks didn't notice them. A few listened, but they don't build a clearer picture until now, in retrospect. Julie Newmar was always gifted with language. She didn't say much, but it made an impression. She occasionally made appearances at fan gatherings in the 1980s and 1990s. She frequently responded to questions about Adam West with a raised eyebrow or a lighthearted smirk. She once said, "He was very Batman," leaving the audience to deduce what she meant. In a different early 2000s interview, she recalled Adam's professionalism on set. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added that the problem was that she was occasionally too professional. Later, she laughed, but gave no explanation. The interviewer went on. No, fans didn't. As time went on, Julie felt more at ease discussing Catwoman's cultural influence. She talked about elegance, empowerment, and striking a balance between appeal and danger. However, Adam's name remained an uncommon occurrence in her stories, like to a character that was absent from a well-known story. There were other written works. Julie was a gifted writer who frequently shared her thoughts and articles online. Julie remained calm in her homage to classic Hollywood romances, saying she never named him, but fans speculated, even in the 2010s, during a resurgence of interest in the Batman series. She shared experiences with Grace when sitting next to other cast members in documentaries and retrospectives. She either turned to safer recollections, costumes, stunts, lighting, and lipstick, or she resorted to complimenting the show when questioned directly about Adam. But her voice would catch a couple times. For a little while, her face would shift as if she had strayed into a recollection and wasn't sure whether to stay or back off. Then, in 2016, a year before Adam's death, a specific panel was presented. Julie was asked by a fan if she ever harbored romantic sentiments for her co-star. The audience held its breath. There was something lovely there, Julie murmured quietly after pausing to smile. However, sometimes beauty is meant to be fleeting. It wasn't precisely a confession, but it was the closest she had ever been to revealing the truth. Julie wrote a message on the internet following Adam West's passing in 2017. It was poetic and brief. Behind the mask, you had a heart too full to talk, yet you wore the cape with honor. There were no further interviews or explanations, just that. The clues were still coming in. The way she talked, the things she didn't say, and the apparent sadness that followed the mention of his name. For a long time, she had carried something within of her that was unsaid but never forgotten. And after a while it was too much for her to bear alone. Julie Newmar outlived almost all of the shining stars of her time by the time she was 89. She still maintained her elegance. Something had changed within her, but her voice still had that distinct calmness. A new level of transparency regarding her life and career was evident in recent public appearances and interviews. She had started discussing legacy, memory, and aging more. Her thoughts shifted inside. Her storytelling style struck fans as having a subtle sense of urgency, as though she was aware that she was running out of time to inform them. The pivotal moment occurred during a Q&A session that was live-streamed as part of a virtual fan celebration. Questions on favorite episodes, stunts, and outfits were asked in a lighthearted and informal manner. Then, as usual, someone inquired about Adam West. This time, however, the query had a different tone. It was soft, almost respectful. Have you ever wanted to say something to Adam, but were never able to? Julie hesitated. She gently raised her hand and spoke before the host went on to the next question. There is, she said. She looked off camera for a time, gathering herself. She went on to say that there comes a time in life when the truth weighs more heavily than quiet. And I've already carried this one for too long. The room altered at that point. Everyone, including the host and audience, was aware that they were going to hear something new. Working with Adam had been a pleasure, according to Julie. She was a great admirer of him, both off-screen and on-screen, but it went beyond that. She claimed that there was a moment when she wished he had seen me as Julie instead than Catwoman, and she believes that he may have done so. However, neither of us did. The admission was sincere, compassionate, and neither theatrical nor sensational. She continued by explaining that the timing had never been ideal, that they had both been careful, and that reputations and careers, particularly in that era, came before emotions. Before we were people, we were icons, she remarked. That was the cost. She merely responded, because love, even if it is unspoken, deserves a voice, when asked why she was choosing to speak now. There were no headlines announcing controversy or screams, just a silent moment that lingered in the digital atmosphere like the drawing of a curtain. After she finished speaking, Julie grinned, but it was a look of calm rather than relief. Fans had conjectured, writers had made guesses, and footage had been analyzed for decades. The reality, however, was far easier, and more human than anyone could have ever guessed. She had nothing left to defend at the age of 89. So finally she spoke the truth. There was nothing scandalous about what Julie Newmar disclosed. It wasn't the kind of discovery that made for viral tweets or tabloid headlines. But for those who had watched, pondered, and waited, it was devastating in its own small way. She made no mention of a covert romance. There were no secret meetings or secret letters. She revealed more nuanced information, and possibly more potent. An illustration of love that was sensed but never sought. A bond that persisted in looks, silences, and unspoken comprehension. She claimed in a follow-up interview that although we were both excellent actors in real life and on screen, I had often pondered what may have occurred if we had stopped acting. Julie acknowledged that she was attracted to Adam, something more profound than a fleeting infatuation or a crush. something that was always there but never acted upon, living subtly beneath the surface. She claimed that he occasionally had a melancholy expression in his eyes, as if he were looking for something but was never quite sure what it was. She disclosed that they had lengthy discussions about life, dreams, and anxieties in between takes while working on Batman, rather than scripts or stunts. She recalled that he once told her that the most difficult aspect of portraying Batman was having to pretend to be brave when he wasn't. That was something Julie had always remembered. She claimed that although they were close, they always maintained a certain distance, in part due to the times. She acknowledged that they were working under intense studio surveillance, due to fear as much as circumstance. I was worried that it would vanish if we recognized it, whatever it was, she said. Thus, we allowed it to exist in the interlude between scenes. Julie's truth has nothing to do with remorse or lost chances. It was about acknowledging that there had been a connection between them, even though it was never given a name, and that it was important. She didn't say this with resentment. She actually appeared appreciative. According to her, some things are lovely because they never come to pass. They are preserved in memory. Fans were shocked by the discovery not because it validated rumors, but rather because it gave voice to a topic that is rarely discussed: the delicate, quiet partnerships that may define a life without ever becoming one. Following her statement, several people contacted her, relating their personal tales of silent love and erratic, enigmatic connections. In response, Julie, always the reflective artist, wrote a little essay that she posted online with the title "What We Never Said." She expressed her sentiments in it as reverence rather than sorrow. Adam West, on the other hand, never discussed such sentiments in public. However, it is difficult to ignore the echoes when one looks back on the interviews and the tone of his voice when he brought her up. The peaceful knowledge, the tenderness. History was not altered by Julie's eventual admission of the truth. It made it bright. It illuminated two people we believed to be familiar, bringing out the warmth that had always been but was out of frame. The actors' performances and the emotions they evoked in us are what are left over after the last curtain has fallen. The legacy of Adam West and Julie Newmar was never limited to Gotham City. The hearts of people who watched them dance across the screen in a bizarre, lovely game of cat and bat were reached well beyond the capes and claws. What television could accomplish was redefined by their relationship. They added nuance in an era of inflexible stereotypes and tidy heroes. Defeating Julie's Catwoman was not an option. She was a formidable, respected, and occasionally even comprehensible force. Adam's Batman was more than just a tights-wearing do-gooder. He was reflective, torn, and, as Julie subsequently disclosed, subtly human. Together, they transcended the role of characters. They turned become emblems. However, what remains now is the humanity concealed behind the masks. Their legacy remained intact despite Julie's late-life revelation. It made it richer. It provided fans with the last piece of the puzzle, a means of comprehending what had previously eluded them. Tributes have kept coming in the years since Adam's death. Books, podcasts, animated cameos, and statues all honor his impact to popular culture. He will always be known as the Batman who could smile and was taken seriously even in the absence of gloom. Julie has also come to terms with her legacy. She now speaks with a blend of wit and wisdom in articles and interviews, not averse to considering what was and what may have been. Her disclosure regarding Adam West has renewed interest in their relationship. When fans rewatch previous episodes, they notice details they missed the first time around and lines that now have two meanings. The elegance with which they maintain their mystery, however, may have had a greater enduring influence. In a world where people share too much and make headlines too quickly, their narrative was delivered in dignity, silence, and moderation. When the world yearned for gossip, they opted for privacy. It was not because it was banned that they clung to something precious, but because of its fragility. When Julie ultimately made the decision to speak, she did so to honor a relationship that had influenced her life rather than to stir up controversy or garner publicity. She reminded the world that stories don't stop when the screen goes black by giving her followers something uncommon: closure wrapped in love. They change, breathe, and occasionally wait in silence for the appropriate time to be revealed. Now all that's left is a form of poetry, a reminder that partnerships that linger subtly in recollection rather than ending in romance can sometimes be the most profound, unaltered, untainted, and enduring. Despite their on-screen cat and mouse game, Batman and Catwoman were two flawed, courageous, and perhaps even little-in-love individuals behind the masks. And perhaps the most exquisite legacy of all is that truth finally revealed. Because, in the end, the things we remember most are the looks, the silences, and the truths that stay with us long after the credits have rolled, not the technology, the feats, or even the phrases.